monetary and fiscal policy. Let us first understand what is a monetary policy. So notice that, see, there are two things which come with money. There is demand of money and supply of money. The demand of money actually comes from the side of individuals. The supply of money is not from the individuals. The supply of money comes from the central bank. Actually speaking, the supply of money is dictated by the government. But the government delegates its task to the central bank to decide the supply of money. So we can say that the government delegates its task of supply of money to the central bank. Now, once the government delegates this task of supply of money to the central bank, the central bank must determine how much money should be supplied in the economy. In order to go ahead and do this, one thing that the central bank can do is that it can perform open market operation. So the central bank can change the supply of money through open market operations. There are two kinds of open market operations that the central bank can perform. The first can be to buy the bonds that are there in the market. So imagine like this. I have this as my central bank. I have this as the general public. Suppose the central bank wants money. Now, if it wants money, the central bank goes to public and says, look, I am going to issue you a bond today. This bond is promising you that after maybe 5 years, I am going to go ahead and give you whatever principal amount you have. Plus the interest on it. So these bonds are interest-bearing assets. So the central bank goes to this general public, says, I am issuing you these bonds. The central bank will sell these bonds to the general public. And in return, because the public has bought these bonds from the bank, the public is going to pay money to the central bank. When the central bank will do this, this will go ahead and it will reduce the supply of money. It will reduce the supply of money. So we can go ahead and say that when the central bank sells government bonds through open market operation, reduces the supply of money. Just the opposite of this happens when in the, so imagine what will happen after 5 years. After 5 years, the central bank will go to this public. People will start redeeming the bonds now. So when people will redeem the bonds, central bank will go ahead and it will buy back the bonds from the public and in return pay money to the public. So we can say that the central bank, when buys bonds, increases the money supply. So it can either buy or sell bonds from the public, thereby affecting the money supply in the market. Now let's say that one such operation is performed by the central bank. Because the central bank is trying to, why will the central bank change the money supply? Because it wants to affect variables like income, output, interest rate, etc. So through its money supply, by fluctuating its money supply, the central bank aims to affect its interest rate in the market or output in the market. Therefore, this is called a monetary policy. So what is a monetary policy? When the central bank affects I and Y through changes in money supply, that is called the monetary policy. So when there will be monetary policy, which curve will get affected? We already know that a monetary policy affects the LM curve. So we know that whenever there is a monetary policy, the curve that gets affected is the LM curve. So what is going to happen? Let's say that I have my initial LM curve here, and let's say that I have my IS curve here. Let's say this is my output and this is my interest rate. Suppose initially my equilibrium is at point E. So I am saying that initially equilibrium in the market is where IS intersects LM curve, that is at point E. Now there is increase in the money supply. When there is increase in the money supply, it is going to go ahead and shift the LM curve rightwards. And when it is going to shift the LM curve rightward, your new equilibrium will be at point E dash. This will be your LM dash. So what happens at the new equilibrium? Well, there is going to be increase in the level of the output, and there is going to be decrease in my interest rate. So at the new equilibrium, the interest rate is going to decrease and the output is going to increase. Let us try to go ahead and understand the dynamics of this equilibrium change. So let's write down the dynamics of increase in money. Try to understand the dynamics. Let's say there is increase in the supply of money. When there is increase in the supply of money, then what is going to happen? There is more money with people. People have more money in hand, right? When there is going to be more money in hand, this is going to mean that if there is going to be increase in the supply of money, and I just look at my money side, money market. So it's like this. My money market MS curve is going to shift to the right. And this is going to go ahead and lead to a lower interest rate. Right? So my interest rate is going to decrease in the money market. When my interest rate will decrease, this will go ahead and it will induce investment. Because we know investment is an inverse function of interest rate, we can write I as I bar minus DI. So when interest rate is going to increase, investment will decrease. When interest rate decreases, investment increases. So in this case, when there is a decrease in my interest rate, investment will start increasing. Now I know that Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX. Note that because interest rate has decreased, investment has increased, so output will also increase by its multiplier effect by more amount. So it is going to increase the output in the economy. So this is exactly what happened. The interest rate decreased and the output increased. Can we say that the monetary policy is in fact effective? We can. So the monetary policy, it is effective if it increases the output in the economy. So the monetary policy led to higher output in equilibrium and hence was effective. For a second, let's look into the equation of the LM curve. If I go back to my money market equilibrium was where the demand of money was equal to the supply of money, even in the real terms, right? So real demand of money was equal to real supply of money. If I have to write it like this, can I say that demand of money was KY minus HI? This was my demand of money. Now, I am asking you what is happening in the money market. So we are saying that, what has happened is that my LM curve has shifted to the right, and it has shifted to the right because there is some change in the supply of money. Supposedly, I want to represent the change in supply of money using this triangle. Triangle represents the change. So change in the supply of money can be K into change in Y minus H into change in I. Okay. Now, if I ask you, what would have been the change in income if IS was horizontal? Let's imagine that the IS curve is horizontal. Let's say this is the IS curve. If this would have been the IS curve, then this was my initial LM. My LM would have shifted to the right. My output would have increased with no change in interest rate. Change in interest rate would have been 0. If the change in interest would have been 0, right here, instead of change in I would have plugged in 0. So I would have got that change in Y is 1 by K change in the supply of money. This is what I would have got. So this horizontal shift, this gap, this change in Y, this gap between the two LM curve, it would have been, this is very important, it would have been 1 by K change in the money. This would have happened if there would have been no change in the interest rate. That is when it would have happened. So now, in our case, what has happened is that IS is not horizontal. IS is in fact downward sloping. And because IS is downward sloping, I did have an increase in the output. My output increased from point A, I went to point B. I did have an increase in the output, but my output only increased from Y to Y double dash. So was the monetary policy fully effective? No. It would have increased the output further had my IS curve been horizontal. Then my output would have increased by this amount. But since interest rate changed, change in output is lesser than what it should have been. So please write down, this is important. Here in this diagram now, above, you can say that this entire change, this horizontal change, this change is 1 by K, change in M by P. Had there been a full shift of the LM curve, my output would have increased by this amount. But my output did not increase by this amount. It only increased from Y to Y. Right? Why is this happening? This happens because of what we call as the crowding out effect. So please understand, my interest rate, so when you increase the money supply, let's try it like this. When you increase, when money supply increases, then in the equilibrium in money market, interest rate decreases. Now, since the interest rate has decreased, I decreasing means there is more investment. But when interest rate decreases, then the government also comes and it takes more money from the bank because the loans are available at a lesser price. So the government increases the demand of the loanable funds. The government also demands those funds. And when the government also starts demanding those funds, it leads to a crowding out effect. That's the first thing that you can say. So that's the reason why you do not see a full increase in the output. The second thing that happens is that if the interest rate starts decreasing, then you understand that people will save less. If people will save less, then savings are what will fund investment. So less savings, less chances of investment. Less investment, less output. So output should have increased from Y to Y dash, but output only increases from Y to Y double dash because there is these two effects that take place. So please write down. So when money supply increases, in equilibrium in the money market, interest rate starts to decrease. Write down lower interest rate stimulates investment which leads to an increase in the level of the output. However, lower interest rate also attracts government to fetch money from the financial sector, thereby leading to crowding out effect. That's the first thing. When interest rate decreases, government also finds the money attractive. Government also asks the bank, give me loan. The same loan gets distributed among two parties. That's the reason why slowly the crowding out effect starts. Secondly, additionally, lower interest rate implies less incentive by public to save money. Don't write public, write households, okay? That's the more economical term. So by households to save less, thereby inducing lower amount for investment. Both these reasons imply that output does not increase to full potential. You're getting it, right? Output could have increased by the shift of the LM curve. The shift of the LM curve is this big. But if I go ahead and I find the gap between the shift of the LM curve, that is not the amount by which output is increasing. Output is increasing, but it is increasing by a lower amount. What I just wrote, you can show its dynamic like this. So what you can do is you can say, let this be the two LM curves, LM and LM dash, and let this be my IS curve. Now, initially, we can say that the economy is at equilibrium at E. Listen very carefully what has happened. This is my level of output, Y. This is my interest rate, I. So when money supply increases, actually the interest rate decreases from E to E dash. This is the decrease in interest rate. So interest rate decreases from E to E dash. But I just told you, when government starts looking at this such a low interest rate, the government pops in and the government demands these loanable funds. And when the government starts demanding these funds, it puts an upward pressure on interest. Imagine if the demand of something will increase, its price will increase. So when the demand of loanable funds increase, its price starts increasing. Price of fund is the interest on funds. So its interest will start pushing up. So, you will see an upward push on the interest rate. This is the downward push on the interest rate till you will reach point E double dash. So if the interest would have decreased to its full potential, then output would have increased to its full potential. When interest rates started decreasing, investment started increasing, output started increasing. But then because of this, the government started taking more loans. It meant that slowly interest rates started increasing. This put a downward pressure on investment and therefore output started decreasing. So the overall impact is that the output should have shifted by the amount of the shift of the LM curve. This should have been the change in output. But the output only changes by this amount. This is the most important theory in the macroeconomics, and I hope this is making sense. You have to understand this crowding out effect very thoroughly. You have to understand, yes, monetary policy is effective, but how effective? You have to try and understand that. Now, this thing can be explained in terms of something which is known as a transmission mechanism.